Harry's heartbreak as the showbiz elite dump the Sussex.
A growing scandal involving Prince Harry and his last remaining genuine charity project, the Invictus Games. But is it really a charity project at all?
I think that will be the beginning of the end for Meghan as a public figure, because this is a man that she's abandoned. Just awful. It will be shame on you.
A global event created to celebrate wounded and recovering service members is now facing uncomfortable questions about money, leadership, and where the funding actually went. What was once widely seen as one of Prince Harry's strongest achievements has become the centre of a growing debate, with critics demanding clearer answers about spending, transparency, and whether the veterans themselves were always treated as the main priority.
Invictus Games for Wounded Warriors, which sounds like the Wounded Warrior Games. And people think, oh, this must be great. And a lot of people are unclear how to read a tax return or to check stats. And so I think it was just very easy to say, oh, the Invictus Games, it's great. It does all this. And then, you know, you start looking into it and you're like, hey, what the heck is going on here? You know, those 535 competitors had to pay their own way. They had to pay their own housing for the games. They had to pay for their own equipment.
The $63 million Invictus Games spend into the mainstream media.
At the centre of the controversy is a petition reportedly calling for Prince Harry to be removed from his position connected to the Invictus Games. The demand is not for a small leadership change or another internal review. Supporters of the petition reportedly want him completely separated from the organisation. Critics behind the campaign argue that their concerns are not aimed at the wounded veterans who compete in the Games. They claim the opposite. Their position is that the athletes should receive more attention, resources and support, while celebrity appearances, executive decisions and expensive event costs deserve much closer examination.
One of the key lines from Paula's brand new and really jaw-dropping reporting this week. And of course, she's being very careful because we know how litigious Prince Harry can be, but this is really extraordinary stuff. So Paula reports, the most recent games held in Vancouver and Whistler in February 2025 brought together 543 wounded military veterans from 23 countries. The total cost 63.2 million Canadian, or approximately $118,352 per competitor.
Adding another layer to the situation, reports citing an alleged source connected to Invictus have claimed that senior members of the royal family are not expected to attend the upcoming Birmingham launch. According to those reports, King Charles, Prince William and Princess Catherine are all expected to stay away. If those reports are accurate, the absence would be noticeable.
It's a cover-up. The Invictus Games Foundation, the British charity at the centre of the operation, recently filed its 2024 annual accounts with the UK Charity Commission after a 2-year grace period. The numbers, Paula reports, raised red flags. In 2024, the foundation cut its direct grants to veteran organisations by 63%, from £534,973 to just £200,328. The same year that foundation income rose 41%, a new 6-figure executive role was added, and cash reserves grew to 2.3.
For years, the Invictus Games were often presented as Prince Harry's signature project and one of the clearest examples of his work supporting military veterans. Now, however, critics say the organisation is facing serious questions from several directions. One of the biggest issues involves the reported cost of the recent Invictus Games in Vancouver and Whistler. The event reportedly brought together 543 wounded, injured and recovering service members from 23 countries. The mission sounds powerful, but critics quickly focused on the reported total cost of $63.2 million.
The foundation's highest paid staff are earned between £120,000 and £130,000 above typical UK charity sector norms. Other interesting things of note: legal fees jumped from £45,000 to £155,000 with no explanation given. Deferred income ballooned fourfold from £431,000 to £1.799 million. An American for-profit company called June's LLC, with no description of purpose, received nearly £30,000 in 2023 and nothing in 2024. And the same filing contains two different company registration numbers, one on the cover page, another on...
Based on those figures, the spending would equal roughly $118,000 per competitor, although that simple calculation does not necessarily reflect how event organisers divide operational infrastructure, staffing, security, and other expenses. Still, comparisons with other military sporting events have pushed the debate further. The Warrior Games in the United States reportedly operates with an annual budget of around $2 million. Another comparable event in Germany was reportedly organised for approximately $200,000 with around half as many participants. Those events may differ in size, structure, location, duration, and operating costs, so the comparisons are not exact. Even so, critics argue that the massive difference in reported spending deserves a clearer explanation. Their question is simple: what specifically made the Vancouver and Whistler Games so expensive? Public funding has also become part of the controversy. Reports indicate that the Canadian federal government contributed approximately $15 million, while the government of British Columbia provided another $15 million. However, critics claim the way some of that funding was structured has created additional questions.
Petition publicly claims that 92% of every pound spent goes towards charitable activities, a figure that technically falls within UK Charity Commission guidelines. But the term charitable activities includes the cost of running the games themselves, not direct grants or services to veterans.
According to reports, the money did not simply move directly into the games organisation. Instead, it was reportedly transferred through a separate corporation connected to the event. That organisation then allegedly paid a licensing fee to the British charity controlling the Invictus name. And this is where the story gets even more complicated. The amount of that reported licensing fee was allegedly redacted from documents available to the public. No public figure alone proves wrongdoing, and a redacted section does not automatically mean something improper happened. But critics say the missing number made them more curious about how the organisation handled its finances.
Of course, Tom Bauer, in his recent book Betrayal, alleged that Invictus funds were directed towards private jets, five-star hotels, and transportation for Harry and Meghan.
I don't think a lot of veterans actually are devastated. The reality is, if you go deeper into Invictus, a lot of veterans are actually more upset, asking where all the money actually goes to.
Once attention shifted toward that redacted figure, people began examining the available documents more closely. According to critics, the deeper they looked, the more questions emerged about spending, organisational structure, executive costs, and whether enough financial information had been made publicly clear. The financial debate became even more intense when the British Foundation eventually filed its 2024 accounts, reportedly after receiving additional time to submit them.
Harry and Meghan came in for 10 minutes for an adoring love shot. And of course, Meghan kissed Harry. And it looked like it was good and full. It wasn't. So I think the public interest is waning. And also in this time of economic disparity, people really want to know where their money is going to. And there are lots of other places that actually support veterans, may give them prosthetics if they need, may build a wheelchair ramp at their home, which is necessary, may do things that really help people as opposed to helping Harry's.
Once those documents became available, critics and observers started going through the figures, and several numbers quickly became the centre of attention. According to reports, direct grants given to veterans organisations dropped by approximately 63% in a single year. The amount reportedly fell from more than £500,000 to around £200,000, creating immediate questions about why direct funding declined so sharply. At the same time, the foundation's overall income reportedly increased by more than 40%. Reports also pointed to a new executive position with a six-figure salary, while cash reserves were said to have climbed beyond £2 million. That combination has become one of the strongest arguments used by critics demanding greater financial transparency. They question why direct grants reportedly moved downward while income, reserves, and certain organisational expenses increased. And the spending questions go even further.
And how they're playing with the veteran money, because they're getting a lot of funding from countries and places to get this, what would typically be veteran support income, that then goes to putting on the Invictus Games. Now, again, I'm not trying to be, belittling what the Invictus Games is trying to do, but I am asking the question of, is it really the best use of veteran funding? Why can't Harry get his own funding? Why is he relying on all these countries to do it?
Legal costs reportedly jumped from approximately £45,000 to around £155,000 within a single year. Critics argue that such a major increase deserves a clearer public explanation, especially for an organisation operating under intense public attention. Another detail involves an American for-profit company that reportedly received close to £30,000. Some observers claim the available filings provided limited information about exactly what services the company performed or why the payment was necessary. None of these figures alone establishes improper conduct. However, critics say the lack of detailed explanations has allowed suspicion and speculation to grow, especially when several financial questions appear at the same time. Then came another unusual detail. According to reports, the accounts appeared to contain two different company registration numbers, with one reportedly shown on the cover and another listed on the balance sheet.
But the Invictus Games, it's great. It does all this. And then, you start looking into it and you're like, hey, what the heck is going on here? Those 535 competitors had to pay their own way. They had to pay their own housing for the games. They had to pay for their own equipment. And Harry and Meghan got a really nice vacation out of it, with lots of adorational speeches and clapping and crowds gathered.
Critics quickly focused on the discrepancy. They questioned how an organisation connected to such a major international event could apparently publish conflicting information about something as basic as its registration details. It could be a simple administrative mistake, and there is no established evidence showing otherwise. But in the middle of a larger transparency debate, even a small inconsistency can attract serious attention. The Foundation has reportedly stated that 92% of every pound received is directed toward charitable activities. That sounds significant, but critics argue that the phrase charitable activities can include far more than direct financial assistance to veterans.
Bauer pointed out in his book, during an absurd wheelchair basketball game, one team didn't even need wheelchairs, while the other team did. It was America versus Nigeria. Nigeria needed the wheelchairs, and after the game, the Americans all stood up, got out of their wheelchairs, and walked off. It's absurd. But also, there was no one in attendance.
Depending on how spending is categorized, those expenses may include event organization, venues, transportation, accommodations, staffing, production, and other operating costs connected to running the games. That distinction matters because critics argue there is a major difference between spending money to operate an international sporting event and directly supporting veterans who need specialized equipment, accessibility improvements, rehabilitation services, or other practical assistance.
Australia has done a U-turn. They had previously cut funding for the Invictus Games, but now veteran backlash has forced them to bring it back. But I want to break this down because I'm not buying it, okay? Australian government has reversed its decision to cut funding for Prince Harry's Invictus Australia charity, with Veterans Affairs Minister Matt Keogh announcing that federal support will continue for another 3 years. As part of establishing the new veterans and families' well-being, we're transitioning funding for broader well-being support. Sounds wise. To the veteran community, to that new agency. As we transition, in order to maintain continuity and certainty of support services for our veteran community, we're providing another 3 years of funding to.
And that is where attention turns toward the competitors themselves. Reports and online discussions have claimed that some wounded, injured, and recovering service members relied on personal funds, fundraising efforts, government programs, or support networks to cover certain travel, accommodation, and equipment costs. The exact arrangements may differ depending on the participant and country involved. Still, critics argue that the possibility of competitors carrying significant expenses deserves closer examination. At the same time, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have faced criticism over reports discussing luxury transportation, expensive accommodations, and costly wardrobes connected to public appearances.
According to tax returns on file, the public picked up half the tab for Vancouver, with the Canadian federal government contributing $15 million through the Veterans Affairs Canada and the province of British Columbia contributing another $15 million through its Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Sport. The remaining funds came from approximately 40 corporate partners and about $2.6 million in individual donations. Crucially, that public money didn't flow directly to the Games. It was routed through the Vancouver Whistler Games Corporation, which then paid a licensing fee to the Invictus Games Foundation, the British charity that owns and licenses the Games brand. The amount of that licensing fee was oddly redacted.
One figure repeatedly circulated online claimed Meghan's clothing expenses reached approximately $180,000. That estimate remains disputed, and publicly discussed wardrobe calculations can vary depending on whether clothing was purchased personally, borrowed, discounted, or provided under other arrangements. Even so, the contrast has become a powerful part of the controversy. Critics see questions about participant expenses on one side, while reports of celebrity-level spending continue attracting attention on the other. The growing frustration is not only about numbers on financial documents. Critics argue that people support the Invictus Games because they want wounded and recovering service members to remain at the center of the mission, not because they want donations associated with expensive wardrobes, luxury accommodations, or celebrity-level treatment. That contrast has become one reason the petition continues receiving attention. Supporters of the campaign claim the issue is about priorities and whether the organization's public image still matches what donors believed they were supporting. But another controversial story has also returned to the discussion. In Tom Bower's book, he describes a wheelchair basketball match involving teams from the United States and Nigeria.
It's really odd, but I do think that people are starting to cotton on. Again, when we look at the numbers of corporate sponsors lining up for Birmingham, there really aren't that many, and we don't know who they are. Only 11. Now, Boeing has, I believe, cut ties. I am doing that story for News Nation. It'll come out later today about how Boeing was the huge sponsor. The contract has ended, and they are not
According to Bower's account, some American competitors reportedly stood up and walked away after the game ended. That story created strong reactions, but context is extremely important. Not every disability or service-related condition is visible, and psychological trauma, neurological conditions, chronic pain, and other injuries can affect veterans without permanently preventing them from standing or walking. Still, critics argue that the incident raises broader questions about classification rules and how competitors are placed into categories. They want clearer explanations about how organisers maintain fair competition while also recognising the wide range of conditions experienced by wounded, injured, and recovering service members.
Us here in the UK, us taxpayer fools, are committing funds to this. I can't believe this. Paula reports the next Invictus Games are scheduled for Birmingham in 2027. The UK government has committed up to £26 million in public funds, despite the city effectively declaring bankruptcy in 2023. It only exited that status in February of this year. With roughly 15 months to go, Birmingham has just 11 unnamed sponsors contributing an estimated £4 million combined. Vancouver, by contrast, had Boeing and Atco as co-presenting sponsors and over 44 corporate partners. So basically, the British taxpayers are footing the bill because no corporates in the United Kingdom want to be involved with Prince Harry, as Dr. Sophie Chandoka of Centre Bali had previously made clear to him. Paula goes on, meanwhile, as I reported last month, the organisation is in a bit of disarray and qualified candidates were refusing job offers with the Birmingham organising team after learning it was Invictus, citing the organisation's reputation.
Attendance has become another talking point. Some critics have claimed that certain events appeared to have limited crowds, with volunteers allegedly outnumbering spectators at some locations. Others questioned whether television coverage, camera angles, and venue layouts created the impression of larger audiences than people attending in person reportedly witnessed. Those claims remain disputed, and crowd sizes can vary dramatically between events, venues, and competition schedules. Even so, critics say the difference between the international publicity surrounding the Games and reports of lightly attended competitions deserves attention. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's appearances have also faced scrutiny. According to some accounts, the couple reportedly attended certain events only briefly, appearing for photographs, greeting people, interacting with competitors, and then leaving shortly afterwards. Whether that criticism accurately reflects their overall involvement is debatable, but opponents argue that short public appearances can create the impression that celebrity attention is receiving more focus than sustained engagement with competitors. Then the controversy expanded beyond public appearances and into government support.
Harry's, yes, I got to be careful with the keywords. He's been under fire because of his African Parks charity, which, again, people have asked him to step down because of the rangers that are working the nonprofit organization in African parks have been accused of, SA and terrible things, torture in the Republic of the Congo. The indigenous rights charity Survival International alleged this week that wrongdoing by the parks was ongoing in the country and called on Prince Harry to resign as a member of the organization's board of directors. African Parks handles the long-term management of 24 protected natural areas in 13 of African countries in partnership with local governments. And the group was accused back in January 2024, which we reported on here, of funding these rangers who had committed human rights abuse.
Australia has historically been viewed as an important supporter of the Invictus Games. That is why reports that government funding was temporarily withdrawn attracted significant attention. The timing made the situation especially awkward because the reported decision came while Prince Harry and Meghan were publicly promoting enthusiasm and support for the Games. Australian government support was later reinstated, according to reports, meaning the funding situation did not remain permanent. However, critics continue focusing on the original pause. Their question is straightforward. What concerns, priorities, or budget considerations caused officials to reconsider their support in the first place? Government funding decisions can involve many factors, and a temporary withdrawal does not prove misconduct by the Invictus Games or anyone connected to the organisation. Still, critics argue that any hesitation involving public money deserves examination when such a high-profile international project is involved. And government support is only one side of the issue. Attention has also shifted toward major corporate sponsors.
Comparison, the US Warrior Games, a similar competition for wounded American service members, runs on roughly $2 million a year. Germany's Invictus-style competition costs about $200,000 and involves half as many participants. The public's taxes footed a portion of...
Really was the fact, again, that this is, I think, where Harry is struggling. I think he felt that his presence just turning up, and this has been the problem almost now with Invictus for the last few years, that, Markle turning up in Canada, rushing in at the last minute saying, I've been busy doing packed lunches. It's just focus about them. I think people are fed up with the way that it's looking in Invictus. And I know this talking to some senior people there, they just thinking, well, where has this gone wrong?
Boeing was reportedly a presenting sponsor connected to the Vancouver Games. When the sponsorship agreement ended, reports indicated that the company did not renew it. There is no established evidence that Boeing's decision was caused by controversy surrounding Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, or the financial questions facing the Games. Companies regularly change sponsorship strategies for business, marketing, and budget reasons, but critics still viewed the departure as significant. Because Boeing has long-standing connections to military aviation and defense industries, some observers believed its involvement carried symbolic weight for an event centered on service members and veterans. So when the agreement ended without renewal, critics added another question to the growing list. Was this simply a routine business decision, or does the organization now face a bigger challenge keeping powerful sponsors committed?
I think with the Santa Bali thing, clearly Harry is tone deaf or too frightened to tell his wife that, look, you are the problem. We need to step back. This has now just become a celebrity thing rather than looking at the true cause, which is to celebrate, honour and really, sort of inspire the veterans. I love them. I think and I'm not just saying that, I genuinely think, wow, when you're fed up, if you watch some of those poor people, and I don't mean poor in a nasty way, but what they've gone through, and they get up, you think, get on with it. If they can do it, you can. These people are inspirational. All the men and women of Invictus and all those services who have gone through terrible things, you truly are. Of course, it's been high.
The sponsorship debate became even louder once critics started comparing the numbers behind different editions of the Invictus Games. Reports suggest that Vancouver and Whistler attracted more than 40 corporate partners, while the upcoming Birmingham Games have reportedly secured around 11 sponsors, contributing an estimated £4 million combined. Those figures do not automatically mean companies are losing confidence. Different host cities, economic conditions, sponsorship packages, and fundraising timelines can produce very different results. Still, critics argue that the smaller sponsor list creates an uncomfortable question about whether major companies remain equally interested in supporting the event. That question becomes even more sensitive when public money enters the picture. Reports indicate that the UK government has committed up to £26 million toward the Birmingham Games.
Meghan and Harry, as you know, put out this thing earlier this year, basically saying they'd like His Majesty the King, the Royals, etc., Invictus, Birmingham. And recently they put out something about some sponsor and all of that, because it's flagging, let's be honest. Invictus, Birmingham, I wish them all the best, I genuinely do. But, this country right now, we're just running out of money at the rate of knots. And it's all down to the government, whichever way you want to say it, it's down to bad spending and bad chancellorship, which is Rachel.
Critics immediately contrasted that amount with Birmingham's widely reported financial problems, arguing that local residents are already dealing with concerns about council budgets and public services. For opponents, the issue is about who carries the financial burden. They argue that if private sponsorship becomes harder to secure, taxpayers should not automatically be expected to cover a larger share of the costs. Supporters of the Games strongly disagree. They argue that an international event supporting wounded, injured, and recovering service members can create benefits that cannot be measured only through ticket sales or direct financial returns. But another reported problem has attracted attention behind the scenes. Some critics have claimed that qualified professionals were reluctant to apply for positions connected to the Birmingham operation because of the controversy surrounding the Invictus brand. There is limited public evidence showing how widespread that reluctance actually was. However, critics argue that even the perception of reputational damage can become a serious problem for an organisation trying to attract experienced employees, sponsors, and long-term partners. And this is where the conversation expands beyond Invictus. Critics point toward other organisations associated with Prince Harry that have faced major public disputes. Centre Barley, the charity Prince Harry co-founded in memory of Princess Diana, became involved in highly publicised leadership disagreements, resignations, and legal disputes. The situation attracted widespread attention and raised questions about governance, internal relationships, and Harry's future involvement with the organisation.
Failure of As Ever is simply impossible to ignore, and more people are picking up on this. Because Meghan Markle made such a fuss about her business, because she had to go endlessly on and prattle on about how great As Ever was doing, how it sold out its first couple of launches, of course that brings a lot of attention to the brand. And as the brand continues to flatline, it's bringing a lot of attention to that as well. And Jack Royston of Newsweek has revealed something rather interesting. However, I feel like he's missing sort of the bigger issue, because he sees a somewhat causation between the decline in Meghan Markle's popularity and the decline in website traffic and likely sales to her brand. But I actually think her popularity probably doesn't have a huge impact on what's happening with As Ever. It has more to do with simply bad business practice.
According to ongoing commentary and unconfirmed reports, some people connected to the organisation may be focused on one immediate goal: delivering the upcoming games successfully before confronting the larger questions surrounding leadership, finances, sponsorships, and public trust. If that is the strategy, the pressure could be enormous. The petition continues attracting attention. Senior royals are reportedly keeping their distance. Boeing's sponsorship agreement ended without renewal. Public funding has faced scrutiny, sponsor numbers have been questioned, and critics continue demanding clearer answers about how money is spent and whether the veterans remain the central priority. None of that proves the Invictus Games are failing or that Prince Harry is personally responsible for every controversy surrounding the organisation. But the questions are not disappearing. Prince Harry is still expected to remain a major public figure at the Birmingham Games. For many observers, staying away would create an even bigger controversy because Invictus has been closely connected to his public identity for years. So the biggest question is no longer whether Harry will appear in Birmingham. It is what happens after the cameras leave, the speeches end, and the headlines move on. Can the Invictus Games rebuild confidence, answer its critics, and put the focus firmly back on the veterans? Or will the controversy surrounding its leadership continue to dominate the story? If you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, share it, and subscribe for more celebrity drama. Then click the next video you see on your screen because another controversial celebrity story is waiting for you there. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.